My parents, mom is 54F and dad is 56M, got divorced when my sister and I were in our late teens. I was 19 and my sister was 17, so it was really strange for us to deal with it. My parents had started growing apart when we were around 10 years old itself, but they'd stayed together for our sake. When they believed they'd done a decent job of raising us and we would be fine even if they got divorced, they decided to go through with it. Now it wasn't like we grew up in a toxic household where they would fight every day or anything of the sort, but there was just no romance. They'd be nice to each other and hardly even fought more than a regular couple would, but that was it. The divorce didn't come as a shock to us, but it sure felt weird since we'd known that this was going to happen someday, but now, it actually was happening. My sister wasn't happy about it at all and threw a tantrum when we were told, saying that they'd stayed together for so long so they definitely could be with each other for the rest of their lives. My parents tried to calm her down, but she just refused to listen to either of them. Of course, they still went through with the divorce, but that led to a lot of bitterness in the relationship they had with my sister. I, personally, don't know who was right or who was wrong, but all I know is that my parents never let me or my sister feel unloved or unimportant to them, so if they wanted to lead separate lives after we were grown up, then that's the very least I could support them in. After the divorce, my dad moved out and had joint custody of my sister. I was in college at the time, so I'd live on campus, and my sister had chosen to live with mom and would visit dad on the weekends. Years passed and our parents still did everything that parents were supposed to do, paid off our college tuition, bought my sister her first car, paid for my wedding dress, and all of that. But my sister was never really able to forgive any of them, I think. So anyway, now I'm 27 and she's 25, and I think we're both now emotionally mature enough to at least try to understand why our parents did what they did. They've had quite a few relationships over these past 8 years, but none of them have ever lasted and have fizzled out before the 1-year mark. Last year, though, we got to know from a friend of my mother's that she'd been out on a date at a really expensive restaurant with none other than my dad. My sister and I were kind of stunned to learn that our parents had decided to reconnect 8 years after their divorce, and while it did feel kind of weird, I was also really excited for them. I wish I could say the same for my sister, though, since she just seemed annoyed by this piece of information. 3 weeks after that, our parents themselves confessed to us that they'd been seeing each other again and were trying to make things work. I was thrilled for them. And now, almost a year later, they're getting married again. They got engaged last week and it was so beautiful. I actually helped my dad plan it. He'd asked my sister as well, but she said that she was busy with work, so she'd be a no-show. She didn't attend the engagement party as well, and I know my parents are trying to be understanding and hide their disappointment, but I can just tell how hurt they are by my sister's absence. A few days ago, I called her up to try and persuade her to meet mom and dad. But she totally snapped at me on the call and said a lot of unforgivable things about our parents. She said that the way they treated us like an experiment all their lives and now, were doing it to us again. That they had no regard for the emotional impact that something like this could have on a kid, and accused them of messing with our heads just for fun. I could understand where she was coming from, but honestly, I could also empathize with my parents, so I don't think either of them was wrong. They weren't wrong for what they did, and my sister wasn't wrong for how she reacted. But then, she said that we must try to break them up right away because it'd be too weird and embarrassing to have our parents get married in their mid-50s. Now that really threw me off, because as far as I knew, people were overjoyed to know that my parents were getting remarried to each other once more, and not one person had said a word about it being absurd or weird. Because it wasn't any of those things, it was a celebration of their love for one another, and it was beautiful. She even confessed that she'd been trying to get in contact with their exes that they'd been with in the past 8 years so that she could dig up some dirt on them and create a rift between the two so they don't go through with this embarrassing second wedding. I was horrified that my own sister would say something like this, let alone even try to act on it. I hung up without even saying a word because I was speechless after what she'd said. I mean, not agreeing with your parents' life choices is fine, but trying to sabotage them? That's just low, and I had no idea how to react to that. I tried to make myself believe that she must have been joking, but her tone, the context, and the way she sounded so deranged all made it seem otherwise. I tried to sleep it off that night, but even my husband could sense that something was really off, so around midnight, while I was still tossing and turning, he asked me what my sister had said and if that's what was making me so uncomfortable. I ended up spilling my guts to him and told him all about what my sister had been suggesting and how she didn't even sound sorry about what she was trying to do. My husband reassured me that I was totally right for freaking out over something like this and suggested that I tell my parents about what she said so that I can keep my conscience clear. I'd wanted to wait till the next day, but I just could not sleep if I didn't tell them immediately, so at around 1 a.m, I called my mother up and told her everything. I was on speaker so both my mom and dad could hear what I said, and after I was done, they just thanked me for telling them. They seemed upset and resigned, and even apologized to me if the way they'd raised us had seemed unorthodox or emotionally draining like my sister had said, and told me that they were just trying to be good parents to us, but clearly, they had failed. Obviously, I told them that they hadn't failed in the least, and I could attest to that. Maybe my sister needed time to come around, but I didn't think of them as the villains here, and they needed to know that so they wouldn't be so hard on themselves. It was an emotional moment for the three of us, and deep down, we all wished we could share it with my sister, but she'd made it abundantly clear that she wanted no part of this. Anyway, after filling them in on what my sister had been planning, I could finally relax a bit and go to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to an angry phone call from my sister, accusing me of trying to turn our parents against her. She called me a tattletale and said that she regretted trusting me in the first place. I was still groggy since I'd just woken up and had practically forgotten the events of last night, so I was really confused. It was only when she mentioned in her rant that our parents had called her up today and told her that she was no longer invited to their wedding unless she learned to be happy for them that I remembered what she was talking about. I was pretty annoyed to be woken up on my day off so early, and I told her that if she couldn't handle being told off by our parents, then maybe she shouldn't have planned to break them up in the first place. I told her that I did the right thing by warning them about what she wanted to do, and said that if she's so pissed off about her parents actually being happy, then they're right, maybe she should just stay away instead. After that, I hung up and went back to sleep. I'd muted all notifications as well so that she wouldn't bother me. An hour later, when I finally did wake up, I found at least 50 texts and 10 missed calls from my sister. She was outraged that I'd dared to hang up on her in the middle of her rant and accused me of trying to actively meddle in her relationship with our parents and making her look like the bad guy while I, as usual, am the golden child. Not just that, but she also said that this was me trying to make sure that she gets cut out of their lives and I walk away with the inheritance alone. That ticked me off because, first of all, I'm not that greedy and I won't stoop so low for the inheritance. And more importantly, I'm not the kind of person to create animosity between my parents and my sister for something so petty. I couldn't even believe that she would suggest something like that, and decided that I wouldn't even dignify anything that she said with a response. But my silence didn't stop her from continuously texting me either, and by the evening, she was demanding that I apologize to her publicly. I don't even know what made her think I was going to apologize in the first place, let alone publicly. I hadn't said or done anything out of line as far as I was concerned, and had only tried to prevent any unnecessary drama from messing with my parents' happiness. And I would do so again gladly, even if it meant going against my own sister, especially if she was in the wrong here. It's been 2 days since then, and while she's been texting me less often, she's still doing it and trying to make me feel guilty for telling on her. This morning, I finally gave up because I couldn't take the relentless accusations anymore. So I finally answered her call and told her that if she was actually delusional enough to expect that I was going to apologize in front of our family, then that was not my problem and she needed to grow the hell up. But she wasn't one to give up so easily and kept arguing with me, saying that if I'd thought that what she was saying was messed up, then I should have confronted her instead of going behind her back to tell on her like we were in kindergarten or something. Once again, she said that I was just trying to impress our parents and show off how great I was while showing her in a bad light. I told her that I'd talk to her once I was back from work and that she needed to leave me alone for a bit now. She hasn't texted me anymore, but she did say that she was disappointed that I, in spite of claiming to understand her, went behind her back still. I'm obviously feeling guilty now, and I guess maybe she does have a point. Ida for telling my parents that my sister wanted to sabotage their relationship somehow? Update 1. I read the responses and I guess I didn't really need to apologize to her. I don't know how to deal with the situation now, though. My sister hasn't spoken to me since the last update and it's been a day now, so I'm guessing that's that then. She's probably just as uninterested in dragging this out as I am and doesn't want to create any more of a fuss than she's already done. So I think it's best for us to brush this under the rug and leave it be. I did speak to my parents, though, and they told me that they hadn't even heard from my sister yet. They're scheduled to get married in a few weeks and I just hope that she apologizes to them before that. I know she won't apologize to me, and honestly, neither am I expecting it. Update 2. Close to a week has passed since I last spoke to my sister and I definitely do miss her, but it's very obvious that she doesn't. She hasn't reached out to me, and it's not because she doesn't have the time, since I've seen her post pictures of herself partying and hanging out with several other people. What really hurt me was that a couple of days ago, one of our common friends from high school had been visiting and had asked her if she'd wanted to meet for brunch, but she'd said that she'd rather meet one-on-one than in my company. That just really sucked, and I don't know if things will ever go back to the way they were, even if she apologizes. Or heck, even if I apologize to her, I don't know if we can ever go back to being the same way that we used to be. I've been really upset about all of this, and my husband is trying his best to cheer me up. I appreciate his efforts, but he's an only child, so he can't understand how difficult it is for me to suddenly stop speaking to my sister. Regardless of how she feels about our parents, we've always been really close, and I've always tried to ignore it whenever she'd speak badly of them because I knew that neither of them were bad people. This one time that I chose to speak up, it ended up with her completely cutting me off. I can't stand this silent treatment thing, to be very honest. I think if she doesn't text me in a few days, then I might just reach out to her first. Right or wrong be damned, I just miss my little sister. Update 3, I ended up being the one to reach out first because, like I said, I just couldn't stand the silence anymore. And I don't know if it was the right decision on my part or not, very honestly, but I am glad that I decided to talk to her. I dropped by her house last evening so that we could smooth things out, and she looked really surprised to see me there. It took us a while to get over the awkwardness of the situation, but finally, we did address the problem at hand. I told her that my whole life, I've thought of her as my best friend, and I'm sure she felt the same way towards me as well, which is why I was taking this so hard and had even bothered to try and fix things with her. I explained that me telling our parents about what she'd said might not have been the best move, given the circumstances, but I just wanted to keep my conscience clear. At the same time, I just really didn't want her to do something rash either. In my eyes, neither she nor my sister was in the wrong, so to say I couldn't just pick sides. And I most certainly wasn't trying to be the golden child or whatever, like she'd accused me of trying to be. I was really hurt by the way she dealt with the situation, but I also understood why she'd be hurt by me telling my parents without bothering to speak to her first regarding the whole sabotaging statement, and I truly was sorry about that. And then, she explained her side of the story to me. When she was told by our parents that she was no longer welcome to the wedding because they knew what I'd said, she felt incredibly hurt because obviously, she realized what she'd been trying to do was totally messed up and wrong. In fact, she'd had that realization as soon as I hung up on her, because I never, ever do that even when she pisses me off. I've always taken my time to correct her, so she knew that she must have said something truly horrible if I didn't even bother to reply to it. She'd been planning to call me up the very next morning and tell me that she didn't mean it, since she thought that calling back immediately would make it seem insincere or whatever. But then stuff happened and she started feeling really resentful towards me. I'd heard of rivalry among siblings, but here, she told me she felt like she was always competing with her parents to win me over instead. We laughed about that. It was kind of uncomfortable, but she still meant it. She told me that ever since she was a kid, she'd believed that our parents and their relationship confused her, and their divorce left her with mixed feelings about the whole thing. She didn't want to admit it, but she missed us, too, but was too proud to actually say it aloud. And now, deciding to get married again just made something snap inside of her, because she felt she was going back to being a confused little kid again who had no words to actually explain what kind of relationship her parents shared. They were married but weren't in love, and yet they weren't divorced. And she'd always felt hurt that in spite of not actually hating each other, they just didn't want to be together. Them announcing their divorce was just the last straw for her when she was younger, because she felt betrayed, somehow. As if their daughters had suddenly just stopped being a good enough reason to stick by each other, and she wasn't sure of how she felt about that whole thing, which is why she distanced herself from the situation altogether. She'd kept this all to herself all these years because, first off, she just didn't know where to begin or who to even talk to. She didn't want to talk to our parents or her friends about it, and she didn't think she could talk to me about it because I'd just try to take their side and explain why her feelings were invalid. I felt hurt that she'd think that, but then again, she was a teenager and didn't know any better. And now, when they'd announced that they were getting married again, it all came rushing back to her. She just wasn't comfortable with this, which is why she'd ended up lashing out, and instead of trying to get to the bottom of her behavior, we just pushed her away even more. Obviously, now that I know what she'd been going through all these years, I understand her behavior. And while we agree that it doesn't just excuse everything, but at least now, there's an explanation for the way she behaved. Both of us ended up in tears because of how emotionally relieving that whole conversation had been, and I guess we really did need to get it all off our chests. She's promised me that she'll talk to mom and dad pretty soon as well, and I've told her that I'll be there for her when she decides that she feels ready to have this conversation with them as well. Hopefully, it'll be before the wedding, because I know how much it'll mean to them if we're both a part of their wedding. Update 4. So, 3 days have passed since the last update, and today, my sister finally spoke to our parents. It was all pre-arranged by me, the time, the place, and felt really formal and official initially, like this was a legal discussion. But once we were all in the same room, it just got so much easier and more comfortable. My sister started off by explaining whatever she'd told me and the things she used to feel as a kid, and the fact that their engagement brought all those feelings back up, and she just snapped. And she said that she really was sorry about whatever she said and did, since she'd been lashing out because of her own suppressed emotions. And my parents also did their part and told her how sorry they were that she'd ever felt this way. Their only intention was to make us feel safe and raise us together so that we would never feel resentful towards them, which is why they decided to stay together, but had never imagined that it would end up confusing and hurting my sister so much. They just assumed that since I never had an issue with their arrangement, she wouldn't either. But they realize now that different kids cope with situations differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. They decided that they'd probably try therapy, since they sincerely wanted to build a better relationship with each other and truly try to understand what they all felt so they don't inadvertently hurt each other. So that was really nice. As for me, well, my sister and I are back on good terms again, and now that all the parental issues are slowly but surely being worked out, our bond is stronger than ever, and I couldn't be happier about it. Our parents are getting married next week, and we're both flower girls, which is a bit quirky, but we're so on board with it. And I feel like my family's finally coming together, something that I've wanted for so long. I'm finally happy. Update 5. They got married. Finally. It's really late at night right now, but I don't even care. I just want to share my happiness. My sister and I being the flower girls was probably the highlight of the wedding, and everyone had a good chuckle at that. Let me just get that out of the way. But my sister's speech just takes the cake. I don't know how or where she learned to write so well, but the way she'd penned down her emotions was just beautiful, and there wasn't a single dry eye present. We literally sang and danced the night away, and by the time we came home, my husband was complaining about how his feet probably wouldn't stop hurting for a month. So you guys can probably imagine how much fun it was. My sister and I really wanted to make it memorable for our parents. We wanted to surprise them with a wedding gift, and what could be better than an all-expenses-paid trip to Italy? My mom almost passed out because she'd always wanted a honeymoon in Italy, but they'd just been too busy taking care of us. And now, it was time to return the favor and let us take care of them. They were obviously thrilled about it, and so were we. I'm just so happy that I could actually start floating right now, lol.